first of all, it's lovely to meet you and be in touch with you over Zoom, as everything is these days. But it'd be good to hear like how it has been, doing, your final show and the, sort of the tail end of your, degree in this pandemic situation.
Prior to the pandemic, I was kind of focusing on data, and I'm from Cornwall, and so this disparity between like my two locations. But with the pandemic, that became like compulsory that I was away from home, and I was here in London, and I couldn't get back, and so with those constraints of the pandemic, it really shifted my work towards exploring those frustrations and seeing how my body moved through the space that I didn't quite connect with in this time that I didn't connect with.
Sorry, where is home?
Cornwall, St Ives.
Cornwall, St Ives, right.
Yeah, just trying to navigate like the dissonance between these two aspects of myself, I guess. And that's highlighted and exemplified by, it was illegal to be outside of the house for more than an hour's exercise. And all of these things were commodified.
What do you mean by commodified?
This act of making was forced into like a 1 hour slot that was government mandated, forced upon me, and I couldn't do anything else. And that was like my only respite, but it was also the only way I could get out of the house and the only way to make. And so it all kind of came bound up in this like frustrating tangle.
So were you using your 1 hour of exercise to make your work? Is that what you're
Yeah, and recording my walks on Strava, using that data to draw, I guess, in the landscape. I do drawing, recording all like my thoughts and feelings, and like photographing just like the mundanities of Groundhog Day, never changing, stuck in the same cycle.
Would you tell me a little bit more about your work? Because obviously, this is happening before the show, and I've never seen your work, so it would be good to try and get a sort of an understanding of what you do generally and where your sort of final project you think it's going and how it's going to be presented.
So my work is kind of like an investigation into the land and myself and like the condition of the time. But also I have aphantasia, which means that I can't visualize anything in my head. And so I think because of that, I'm kind of trying to seek out these latencies within myself and the land. And so I think my practice at the moment in its current form, like I'm writing a book and making a video, and they're all kind of just I guess collaging my experience through text or sound or color photography. So I guess it doesn't take on one solid form. It's constructed out of all of these other snippets of existence.
When you present it, is it like an installation of different mediums? And
I guess it's taking on lots of different forms, which I think is because of the restrictions. Because I don't think if it was the pandemic, I would be showing like in the way that I am. But for the open studio and online showcase, I will be presenting like an installation kind of hub or lab or some sort of space that people encounter this experience that I've gone through, but also cumulatively, like we all have passed through this phase of our lives, be it like good or bad. And I hope it's just like a place where people can kind of encounter and reflect on the past year and a half.
I mean, the way you're describing it this idea that, or this, it's a constraint, isn't it, that you wouldn't, you're presenting work in a way, or you're making work in a way that you wouldn't have made it if the pandemic didn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is quite a sort of challenging thing. Would you say that's the biggest challenge, or do you think there's other challenges related to all the sort of measures that are in place or have been in place? And do you think that will change now that they're easing off slightly? There seems to be some light, although that could be taken away again at any point.
I think the biggest challenge for me has been psychological, and how many acts of resistance can you perform, and who do they benefit? Like, I could go out and break all the rules, but morally I wouldn't feel okay with that. But I want nothing more than to go home and like hug my parents or see my grandparents and like be in that landscape that I'm so comfortable with. So I think psychologically that's been the biggest challenge, and I guess that's why I've made my work as like a figuring out, like a key to kind of understand it, and try and find some respite within it all.
St. Ives is such a different place to London, and so far away as well. It's almost like another country. Everything about it is different. It even has a different climate, different vegetation. Yeah. So that there must be a degree of sort of culture shock that comes with that. Generally, just coming from St. Ives to London, that's a general thing. But then to be isolated in London by yourself, I can imagine that's quite it's quite a traumatic experience. It's a trauma, and the pandemic actually has been a trauma from all of us, for most people, in varying degrees of, uh, varying levels of trauma. But I guess that no doubt sort of translates into what you do as an artist, because that's kind of the only thing you can do in a way. That trauma sort of manifests in practice. I wonder if, what about the support that you got from the student hardship fund? Did that sort of help? How did you feel about that?
I mean, definitely. Both my parents are key workers, and so another reason why I couldn't go home was, if I go home and bring COVID back with me and they have to isolate for 2 weeks, that's a lot of money that's lost. And being up in London, I kind of avoid that most of the time, because I'm away from it. But the hardship fund has allowed me to access materials to make, and I've got a printer, so hopefully I can start selling some of my prints as well, and kind of supporting myself past uni. All of the equipment that I have got now, I wouldn't have been able to have had without the support of uni, and it's really allowed me to expand my practice and not just sticking to drawing as, a graphite stick and some paper. I've used tape decks and recorders and cameras and printing stuff, and it's all really furthered my practice that I wouldn't have been able to have done having just survived.
And do you think in some ways the pandemic has sort of taking your work into a direction that you wouldn't have you wouldn't have normally taken it, but it has had some positive effect on your practice, made you think about things in a different way, perhaps?
I think I'm more critical with my practice now because I've had time to really figure out why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, why I'm walking, why I'm interested in the different aspects of like the history and the language, and figuring out, like you were saying, that culture shock between the two places. I've had time to research and think and look at the different meanings of Cornish words and their relation to English words, and I'm glad that I've been grounded in one place and I haven't been able to go home, because that frustration has made me try and visualize, even though I can't see anything. It's tried to make me like visualize it more. Like when I don't know, when you close your eyes for like a really long time and the colors kind of shift around. It's like I've done that, and like things are actually starting to appear now. So I wrote my dissertation on, well, the title was Unmoored: Navigating Digital Images Within the Singularity of the Network. And it kind of explores the flattening of time that has occurred over the past, I don't know, 50, 40 years in like the internet, and how you have constant access to all of these things. And because I'm now presenting my work online for the showcase, I was considering, like, have you shifted your practice to be better observed through like a digital lens?
I would say yes. The short answer to that, are you talking about in general or in relation to the pandemic?
No, I think like in general, with that shift towards the internet becoming like a primary medium in which we consume art.
Yeah,
Like one of the primary mediums in which we consume art.
sure. For me, it's completely related to the pandemic, because before the pandemic, I wouldn't really put my work on the internet, because it's just not a digital thing. It's a physical thing. Like the body and the presence of the body in the space in relation to electrical signals and sounds and other kinetic or moving image material is completely phenomenologically physical,
Yeah.
because your body receives that information physically, as well as, like in terms of electrical signals literally resonate parts of your body in real time, as opposed to just the sound and the visual, which can be reproduced digitally. So up until the pandemic, no, I wasn't really using the internet as a means of distribution for my work. It was quite overtly a resistance to that. But then during the pandemic, I've changed that for the obvious reasons, because I still wanted to communicate. But I've made work specifically for the digital medium, and digital media. But the good thing about it for me is just the democracy of it, that it can be.
It's accessible.
It's accessible to everyone, everywhere, all the time, for free, and that's the kind of intent there. I think that's the part that's interesting for me, rather than it be, it becomes content focused. So the content is accessible for free. I mean, they're two different things. I heard a statistic. There was this stat from a friend of mine, Omar Khalif, who's a curator, and his work is, his interests are in technology and specifically digital technologies, and sort of in a post-colonial context. But he told me this statistic the other day about someone between the age of 20 and 30 will see more images in a day than somebody at the age of 90 will have seen in their lifetime. Right. So, something along those lines. I might have.
That's about right.
I might have. It might not be exactly correct what I've said, but it's something along those lines, right? And and that says a lot about the excess of the internet, and actually it does, and the sort of and the amount of information that's being exchanged and the speed at which it's being exchanged.
Yeah.
It says a lot, because it means that things are very ephemeral as well. The amount of information that there is in an image is so much more than there is in a in a paragraph of text, let's say. But that disappear, you see it and it disappears again immediately. So it's also very ephemeral.
Completely shifted the way that we view images, in my opinion.
Yeah, the way that we engage with media and the content, is very ephemeral. So that's something, I guess, worth thinking about.
See, it's interesting because I call it like a pilgrimage or a walk to Cornwall, that my work is surrounding. I was planning on walking to Bude, which is where, like, a lot of the communications technology history is based in Cornwall, with like the Telegraph Museum and Marconi's radio. And in Bude, it's where all of the transatlantic internet, like fiber cables, land. And it's like one of the main places. I think 25% of the world's data comes in and out of there. And it's so interesting to like have all of this data that sloshes about, and we see so much of all the time in a physical place underground, and it's just paved over, not there. It always really interests me that this thing that's so intangible and, like you're saying, ephemeral, holds such weight.
Yeah, and also, data seems to have this power now that people almost just rely on data so much that even if there's a massive mistake, they can't really reconcile that in real life. So you might have, I don't know, like a medical record that, I heard this story recently of a person that got told, what was it? He got told that he was really obese, he was really overweight, and he needs to do something about it. And so he went in and he said, what do we, and they were like, oh, sort of put him on sort of medication and gave him dieting things. But this guy wasn't actually overweight. He was kind of like a normal weight. I mean, he wasn't like the thinnest person, but he was kind of normal.
Yeah.
Like on his profile, his medical profile, there was a human error where instead of saying he was 6 foot, they'd written that he was 6 centimeters. So his weight was according to, like if he was 6 centimeters tall. But nobody clicked on this, and this went on for an incredible amount of time, where he was being diagnosed with obesity when there was just a kind of and nobody clicked for ages. So, this idea of like, giving full faith to, Google or whatever, or just, the data that sort of is representational of us, is kind of really dangerous and absurd at the same time, and there's so much of it, and how do you siphon through all of it to like, go, oh, well,
too much to even consider. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself to help you succeed after graduating?
Keep your friends and colleagues close. and enemies. Keep your enemies close, or just don't make enemies in the first place. Yeah, I think yeah, keep your peers close to you, and share ideas and share things, and not to be protective over your work, and not to be precious. I think not to be precious is the most precious thing in a way. Um, and being very, yeah, and just sharing with your peers and doing things and being productive. I think that's the most important thing I probably learned, and wish I sort of thought that even more when I graduated.
That's good to hear. How did you make yourself stand out against your peers then, in light of that?
I mean, I think that is one way of doing it, being open and sharing, because then people actually vibe off that. But also, the way I ended up ultimately standing out was because I left London and went to Sheffield. And in Sheffield, it was there was less noise, so that really helped. So, going back to Cornwall, in a way, going to St. Ives is a luxury, if that's what you plan to do, at some point, and you can make the most of that.
I think it's just it's difficult to separate yourself when you've been told that this is the place that you're going to do it. I think especially growing up in like it's busy for 12 weeks of the year, and then there's nothing like so that's all that I consider when I think about St. Ives, amongst its beauty and the landscape and the history. But it's a difficult place, and like Cornwall's one of the most impoverished counties and received the most EU funding, but has a very beautiful facade to it. So yeah, it's just figuring that out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't think there's other ways of doing it. I'm just speaking from experience. And
Yeah,
in some ways it's awful because I never, Sheffield wasn't where I was from. So it'd be different if I went back to where I was from, it's a completely different dynamic. So
yeah,
I think the key is probably this idea that you have to stay in London to make it is a bit not far-fetched isn't the right word, but it's a bit of a fallacy. And if you're talking about standing out, then it's easier to stand out outside of London than it is in London.
Well, I guess in like the liminal spaces as well, there's a lot more opportunity for exciting things to emerge, like away from the central, like ruling classes, the ruling powers. What is your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration, tough question, is, I mean, it's just life, like being conscious, like a conscious being, and having experiences, a new experience every single day, like I think yeah, it's just, I mean, it's kind of morbid to say it, but even the pandemic was a massive inspiration for me because, suddenly we're faced with that brand new reality,
Yeah.
And everything changed overnight. And everyone, on this planet at that moment was in a situation that they've never been in before, because whenever, the last pandemic, major one, Spanish flu, let's say, was, everyone is already gone from that pandemic. There's no like experience of it. So that's extremely transformative. So, the biggest inspiration for me probably is just the everyday, because so much happens in it.
Has the pandemic changed the way that you approach creativity? I know that we spoke about making more digital facing work, but has anything else changed?
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, other than translating the stuff digital that we've spoken about, it's more about the excess. I'm consciously trying to limit any excess, which could be travel, when it's not necessary, which could be producing things when it's not necessary. I know, production plays a huge role in so many things, from process of making to just to the economy, and things ticking over. But at the same time, what are ideas and what are artworks? Can they be communicated without excess? Can you make artworks with just the body? Yes, you can. There's a history of it. I'm sure you know this just from what you're doing, right? Can you make artworks without traveling? Yes, you can. Can you do exhibitions without traveling? Yes, you can. So I think these questions are really fundamental questions for everyone, not just artists, for people doing all kinds of things, because we do have real urgent things like climate change, for instance. And it's clear that, the pandemic is also an example of how, as a species, we have made ourselves vulnerable. If it wasn't for the amount of flights that were being taken, there wouldn't have been that kind of collateral.
And direct intervention with nature as well, with
Absolutely
the possibility of where it outbreak and all of that.
So I think those things, will have to feed into mine and everyone else's practice to kind of address the issues of, excess, basically.
I think the concern is that things will people will want to return back to normal and reject this way of living. But it's interesting to hear you saying that is going to, it's directly impacted your work now. And it's going to be something that you will consider.
Yeah, I think I was considering it before the pandemic. I hated flying everywhere. Yeah. I love going to places, but just the unnecessariness of it was really annoying, and producing things that get shown once and then go into storage, and it's just not really. It doesn't. It doesn't add to the solution. It only adds to the problem. So that's a question. I forget the name of the artist that actually said this, but another curator, actually Victor Wang, told me that he'd been speaking to this artist, and he said that everything he does, he asks whether it adds to the problem or adds to the solution. And it's a super interesting way to think. Obviously you have to figure out what the problem is, and there may not be a solution because there may not be a problem, so but I think it's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. And we were already at a tipping point, and it was sort of inevitable that something like that would have happened in one form or another. And it's just a shame that what we thought before was normal, because it wasn't. It wasn't normal. So this idea of going back to normal is actually
quite grotesque in my eyes.
Yeah,
it's like extreme. And
for me, it's like more like an idea of, let's go back to the abnormality, and what's the sort of purpose in that?
Do you ever reuse elements of your work in other artworks? Because I only ask this because I've got this big rock that I've got from Cornwall that has like made its way into so many different things of mine, and like it's been carried from house to house, and I've got it literally like sat over there now, and I'm going to use it again, you know.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, all the time. I use the same material over and over again, objects or things, and they, you know, it might be one work for a while and then it comes out and becomes another
Sure.
work. Yeah, and even video material or, you know, sounds and things, everything is always reused all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
and I sometimes just, yeah, destroy older works to make new works from them. I think it's quite a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, and something beautiful about making something again and again out of the same pieces.
And also, there's something nice about what you just said, because it's a rock that you're talking about, this thing that you found in nature, which is so magnificent in itself that it, you know, it's a thing that you can keep going back to, and that's kind of beautiful. What about, you know, your idealistic plans? Like, what would you like to be doing after you graduate?
First of all, I want to return back to Cornwall and just go home and like soak it all up. But ideally, I want to be back in London for some time, just because I haven't had like a chance to fully experience it. Half of my degree's been with COVID, and so I haven't had a chance to see all the things that I want to see, and that I want to walk the whole of the Thames path and just have it as a nice base to explore things from. And I I'd love to find a job in the arts, but obviously, like this isn't one of the most precarious times to find any job, and hopefully go on to do a master's at some point after then. But project-wise, I'm gonna try and get some money together and propose some like radio investigations and kind of scanning different areas for like the latent frequencies, and kind of that connection between Cornwall and the Thames estuary where the pirate radios went out from, um, and just kind of exploring the different, I guess, different frequencies of the land and like the frequencies within themselves, um, and just use my next few years as a bit of a play, I guess, um, with no like academic measures against it, for the first time in my life in like such a long time, since I've been, you know, 5, be like my first time out of education. So I think it will be quite exciting.
Well, it sounds like you've got lots of things to look forward to.
Yeah.
Send me a link to your show, your project when it's up and ready.
Yeah,
Good.
I definitely will. Pardon? Sorry, you just cut out there.
Sorry, I was just saying good luck with it all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.